In the quiet town of Joliet, Illinois, the year was 1980. Life at St. Mary's Convent moved with routine calm. Prayers at dawn, the hum of hymns, and the faint echo of footsteps on stone floors. But one fateful night, silence swallowed that peace forever. For nuns vanished without a trace. And for nearly 3 decades, no one knew what happened until a priest uncovered something so chilling, so unthinkable, that it changed everything. This is not just a mystery. It's a story of faith, betrayal, and a discovery that left even the most devout questioning everything they believed. It was the summer of 1980. St. Mary's Convent, a modest building just outside Joliet, wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to make headlines. The convent housed 12 sisters, women of quiet devotion, who split their days between teaching at the parish school, volunteering at hospitals, and praying in the candlelit chapel. But among them were 4 women who shared an unusual closeness: Sister Catherine, Sister Margaret, Sister Angela, and Sister Teresa. Each had taken her vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Each had chosen a life away from the world, and each was respected for her unwavering faith. Then they were gone. On a humid July morning, Father Donovan, the parish priest, walked into the convent expecting to share breakfast with the sisters. Instead, he found uneaten bread, untouched coffee, and 4 neatly folded habits left on a wooden bench. At first, the other nuns believed the women had gone out early, perhaps on an unscheduled retreat. But hours turned to days, and not one of the 4 returned. When police were finally called, they searched every corner of the convent, the parish, and the surrounding woods. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No blood. No clues. It was as though they had walked into the night and disappeared into nothing. Local law enforcement struggled. For women vanishing at once? Without struggle? Without witnesses? Rumors swept through the community. Some whispered that the sisters had run away together, rejecting the strict rules of the convent for freedom. Others suspected foul play, an intruder, perhaps, or someone from within the church itself. But there was no evidence, and the case grew cold. For weeks, townspeople lit candles on the convent steps. Parishioners gathered in prayer vigils, begging for the sisters' safe return. But as months passed, prayers turned to unease. Whispers about hidden sins of the church spread. Some parishioners stopped attending Mass. Others accused church leaders of covering something up. Still, Father Donovan never stopped searching for answers. He spent countless nights reviewing police reports, speaking with the remaining sisters, and even walking the convent halls at midnight, hoping for something. Anything. Father Donovan wasn't just a parish priest. He was a man tormented by responsibility. He had taken vows to protect his flock, and now 4 of them were gone under his watch. Privately, he began keeping journals. Every rumor, every shadow, every strange noise in the convent, he wrote it down. His notes would later span more than 20 notebooks, filled with desperate scribbles of unanswered questions. And among his notes was one chilling line, written months after the disappearance. The walls know more than they will tell, and I fear the silence is not holy. In the years that followed, strange stories emerged from St. Mary's. Visitors claimed to hear footsteps in empty hallways or whispers echoing in the chapel late at night. One housekeeper reported finding a rosary buried under the floorboards, its beads cracked and blackened as if burned. Father Donovan himself admitted, privately, that he sometimes heard faint knocking sounds from behind the convent walls. But when workers inspected, they found nothing. In 1984, 4 years after the nuns' disappearance, a construction crew repairing the convent basement stumbled upon something unusual: a locked wooden chest hidden behind a false wall. Inside were church documents dating back to the 1950s, along with personal diaries from long-dead priests. Most seemed ordinary, but one diary contained disturbing entries, mentioning sins of the sisters and warnings about 4 souls bound together in secrecy. Police examined the chest, but found nothing linking it directly to the missing nuns. The case remained unsolved. But for Father Donovan, the chest was proof the convent was hiding something. and he swore he would not rest until he uncovered it. As the 1980s turned to the 1990s, the disappearance of the four nuns faded from headlines. But not for Father Donovan. His obsession grew, and in time, his relentless search would lead him to a discovery that no one could have imagined. What he found, nearly 3 decades later, would shake the church and the entire community to its core. But before we get there, we must first understand the shadows he walked through, the secrets he unearthed, and the suspicions that haunted him for 28 long years. Because this story is only just beginning. By the mid-1990s, Father Donovan was no longer the same man. His once sharp homilies had grown heavy with shadows. Parishioners whispered that he seemed haunted by sleepless nights, trembling hands, and sermons that often drifted back to one subject: the missing sisters. The church had urged him to let the past rest, but he couldn't, and though he never admitted it publicly, his faith was cracking. How could God allow this? He wrote in one of his journals. What shepherd loses for sheep and calls himself faithful? But what he didn't know was that his darkest questions were about to be answered. In 1997, a visiting nun from another parish mentioned something odd. During confession years earlier, she recalled, one of the missing sisters, Sister Margaret, had been deeply troubled. She had spoken of a secret she could not carry alone, and of a vow broken that would endanger them all. The priest who heard that confession had since died, but the words lingered, passed down through hushed whispers. For Father Donovan, this was no small detail. A vow broken? A secret? Could this have been the reason the women vanished? Soon, rumors multiplied. Parish records hinted at disagreements between the 4 missing nuns and the Mother Superior. Some believed the women had planned to leave religious life together, breaking their vows in defiance of the church. But others whispered something darker, that the sisters had been dabbling in forbidden rituals, cloaking them as late-night prayers. Was it rebellion, or something more sinister? No one could agree, and the lack of answers kept the mystery alive. In 2002, Father Donovan gained access to the diocesan archives, a labyrinth of locked rooms filled with old letters, parish records, and forgotten church files. There, buried beneath stacks of faded documents, he discovered a sealed envelope marked only with the year, 1980. Inside were typed notes, unsigned, no letterhead. They mentioned 4 women, taken for the sake of silence, and the convent walls holding what tongues cannot speak. Donovan froze. Was this a confession? A threat? A warning? He didn't know. But one thing was certain. The convent itself held the answers. In 2005, nearly 25 years after the disappearance, St. Mary's Convent underwent a long-overdue renovation. Workers tore down aging walls, replaced rotted floorboards, and dug into sections of the basement that had been sealed for decades. It was there, behind a bricked-off section of the cellar, that they found something chilling, a hidden passageway leading to a small underground chamber. The chamber was bare, except for a wooden table, several rusted chains fixed into the walls, and faint marks carved into the stone. Police were called. Some investigators believed it was a storm shelter from decades past. But Father Donovan, he wasn't so sure. To him, it looked like a place meant to keep people in, not keep danger out. On the chamber wall, faint and almost erased, were strange markings. They weren't crosses. They weren't words. They were crude symbols, some resembling inverted stars, others like circles split in half. When Donovan showed photographs to a theologian, the expert turned pale. "These aren't Christian symbols," he said. "They're closer to occult markings, protective or binding in nature." If true, this suggested something horrifying. Had the nuns been trapped here, bound here, or worse, sacrificed? When news of the chamber leaked, the town of Joliet was gripped by fear once again. Old wounds reopened. Some parishioners claimed the church had always known and had hidden the truth. Others believed this was proof of an ancient evil tied to the convent itself. Vigils turned into protests. Faith turned into suspicion. And through it all, Father Donovan kept digging deeper. In late 2007, Donovan wrote what would become his final journal entry on the case. "For years, I have searched. The convent speaks in silence. but its silence is deafening. The truth is close. I feel it in my bones. Soon, I will open the last door. If I am wrong, may God forgive me. If I am right, may He protect me. What happened next would haunt everyone who knew him. In 2008, 28 years after the disappearance, Father Donovan returned to the convent during yet another renovation phase. This time, workers had unearthed a second hidden chamber deeper underground. Inside, Donovan found something that made him collapse to his knees. 4 sets of rosaries, 4 small wooden crosses, and beneath the dirt floor, human remains. Tests confirmed the unthinkable. They belonged to the 4 missing nuns. For nearly 3 decades, they had been entombed beneath the very convent where they had prayed, laughed, and lived. The discovery shocked the world, but answers remained scarce. How had the sisters died? Who had sealed them away? And why? The official report listed the deaths as undetermined. No suspects were ever charged. The church offered prayers, but little explanation. And the chamber, once studied, was sealed again. For the families of the 4 women, there was no justice, only sorrow. Father Donovan never spoke publicly about what he saw that day. He resigned from his parish soon after, retreating into obscurity. Friends say he aged rapidly, his health declining until his death a few years later. In his will, he left behind his journals, thousands of pages filled with clues, drawings, and prayers written in desperation. The final page carried only one haunting sentence. The church keeps its secrets, but the ground remembers. And so, the story of the 4 vanished nuns remains one of the most chilling mysteries in American church history. For nearly 30 years, they were hidden beneath holy ground. The priest who searched for them gave his life to the pursuit of truth. And to this day, questions linger. Were they victims of foul play, punished for breaking vows, or caught in something far darker, tied to the very walls of the convent itself? Perhaps we'll never know. But one thing is certain: faith can guide, faith can heal, and sometimes faith can conceal. The discovery of the 4 nuns remains in 2008 shocked not only the parish of Joliet, but the world. For nearly 3 decades, their fate had been a whispered mystery. Now the truth was unearthed, but not the answers. National media swarmed the convent grounds. Reporters demanded to know who was responsible. How did the sisters die? But official statements were scarce. The diocese offered condolences, but avoided details. The police called the case cold beyond repair. The families of the women wept, clutching rosaries that had once belonged to their loved ones. For them, grief turned into a wound that would never heal. In the absence of answers, theories grew like wildfire. Some believed the sisters had been killed for trying to expose corruption within the church. Others claimed they had fallen victim to a ritual, an attempt to seal away evil that ended in tragedy. And then there were the skeptics who insisted it was all far simpler. Perhaps a case of punishment gone too far, covered up to protect reputations. But one thing united all sides: disbelief that 4 women could vanish, dive beneath holy ground, and remain hidden for nearly 30 years. In his final years, Father Donovan was said to have held quiet meetings with a select few parishioners. He never spoke publicly, but behind closed doors, he revealed fragments of what he'd learned. One man later recalled Donovan saying, "They didn't choose to leave. They were chosen to disappear." What did he mean? Who had chosen them? The priest took most of those secrets to his grave, leaving behind only his journals, cryptic, sorrowful, and filled with unanswered questions. After Donovan's death, one final piece of evidence surfaced. Among his belongings, tucked between 2 pages of scripture, was a folded note. It reads simply, "4 souls taken to bind what should never be loosed." The handwriting was shaky, as though written in fear. Some saw it as the ramblings of a tormented man. Others believed it was a final clue, that the nuns' deaths were not random, but part of something darker, something buried within the convent walls long before 1980. In the years following the discovery, strange reports emerged from the old convent. Workers claimed to hear whispers echoing in the empty hallways. Doors would slam shut on their own. One caretaker even swore he saw 4 figures in habits, standing in the chapel, silently watching. The diocese dismissed these as superstition, but the rumors spread until many locals refused to step foot near the convent at night. For the families of the sisters, the discovery offered no closure, only more pain. Without answers, grief could not transform into healing. They were supposed to live lives of service, one relative said, but instead they became secrets. The case was officially closed as undetermined, but the mystery refused to die. Books were written, documentaries filmed. Each retelling brought more theories, more questions, and more fear. This day, the Catholic Church has never released a full account of what it knew in 1980. Some documents remain sealed. Some officials have remained silent. Critics argue that the Church protected itself rather than its daughters. Believers insist the truth lies beyond human understanding. Either way, silence has only deepened shadows. Even now, in Joliet, the story of the vanished sisters divides the community. For some, it is proof of hidden sins. For others, a cautionary tale of faith tested and corrupted. And for many, it remains a wound, an open question that haunts every prayer whispered in the old church. But beyond the theories and shadows, there is one undeniable truth. For women devoted their lives to God and to service. Sister Margaret, Sister Anne, Sister Catherine, Sister Louise, they vanished in silence. They were discovered in silence. And perhaps silence is the only language that can carry the weight of what happened to them. For nuns vanished in 1980. 28 years later, their bones were discovered beneath the convent where they had once prayed. Was it murder? A cover-up? A ritual sealed by fear? The truth has been buried by time, silence, and secrecy. But the story of the 4 sisters will never be forgotten. Because while the church may keep its secrets, the earth always remembers.